happening? What's happening? What's up? What's up? What's up? It's your boy Sharif Prescott, and I thank you for joining me today. So, without further ado, thank you for watching Carbon Ether Podcast with Knowledge Misunderstanding. It's been a pleasure knowing that over 1,400 some odd people have subscribed to the channel, and we have over 13,000, 14,000 views. You know why this is important? That means that you guys are paying attention. That means that we're doing something that you guys like. And the attention that you're giving us, we greatly appreciate. And we couldn't ask for anything any better. You know, hey, mom, I told you I was gonna start a podcast and it was gonna be all right. I'm doing good, Christine. Love you, girl. Mwah, mwah. Okay. Before we begin, I would like to talk about this book called Medical Apartheid by Harriet A. Washington. Um, a friend of mine told me about this book. I went to Amazon and I picked it up. And when it came in, I immediately opened it and laid across my bed and began to read. Book is heartbreaking. The treatment of people that look like me, especially the women. It's atrocious. It's some of the things they done. It's terrible. But rather than me talk about it, how about I just go ahead and tell you? Um, from the era of slavery to present day, starting with the earliest encounters between black Americans and Western medical researchers and the racist pseudoscience that resulted. Medical apartheid details the ways both slaves and freedmen were used in hospitals for experiments conducted without their knowledge, a tradition that continues within some black populations today. There you have it. They became test subjects. Didn't know it. Didn't need anesthesia. None of that stuff. Didn't need anything to kill the pain whenever they went inside and started operating on these people. I don't know why they thought that way, but yes, I do. I'm lying. Sorry. But it is what it is. It says that the book, it reveals how blacks have historically been prey to grave robbing as well as unauthorized autopsies and dissections. Moving into the 20th century, it shows how the pseudoscience of eugenics and social Darwinism was used to justify experimental exploitation and shoddy medical treatments of blacks. Charles Darwin is praised. Charles Darwin was a staunch racist. He was a bigot, and he was a terrible man. He and his cousin was the ones that actually started this whole eugenics thing, and they put Margaret Sanger in the forefront. A lot of you guys didn't know that. But I just gave you some food for thought. Please go do your own independent research. Do not take my word for it. Go search these things out for yourself, and you'll see what I'm saying is true. But again, Medical Apartheid. It's a great read, but it's a painful read by Harriet A. Washington. I would advise that you guys please go get it. Please read it, especially you women of all colors, all walks of life. It's a great book. I want to talk to you today about Black Freedoms in a New Cage. Is what I'm going to call this. We're going to go from antebellum and work our way. We're going to go from the antebellum period, which is slavery for you guys that don't know. That's what that period in American history was called, the antebellum period. And work our way forward all the way up to civil rights. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. Antebellum era, pre-1865. System, chattel slavery. Black people were legally considered property. Sad thing, hey man, you can't talk to bring my back over here, we're talking N-word. Okay. Economy of the South built on forced black labor, primarily in cotton and agriculture. Put them out in the field, as Dr. Joy DeGruy was talking about. You go out in the field before the sun comes up, and you stay in the field far after the sun's gone down. Sometimes stayed out there so long, you worked so hard, the muscle detached from the bone. This is true, but it's true, but that's what happens. Okay, let's go into sharecropping. The sharecropping era post 1865 to the 1940s. Followed immediately after slavery. Emancipation in 1865 didn't come with land, wealth, or protection. It actually did come with land, but I see why they said it didn't, because the 400,000 acres by way of General Order Number 15 stated that black people, newly freed, melanated people, were supposed to all be given land, 50 acres and a mule, whatever. Andrew Johnson came behind like, hell no, those N words ain't getting none of that. We're gonna give it back to the people it was taken from. So again, that's what happened. Um, Most freed people ended up working on the same plantations that was enslaved on. Sad but true, they had nowhere else to go anyway since Andrew Johnson came and took the land from the people and divided it back up to the previous owners of whatever, which most of the time they stole the land from somebody anyways. But I'll digress and keep it moving. Um, Landowners loaned land and tools in exchange for a share of crops. Now, what are they saying there? Okay, we're gonna give you this piece of property over here, but whenever you grow your crops or what have you, I need a portion of it. And typically they done well, or they give them a shoddy piece of land that wasn't any good, and then tell them that they haven't met their quota and blah blah. It was all this Ponzi scheme that was using the newly freed prisoners of war, slaves, so they can get ahead themselves. It was sad but true. Um, Black families were kept in perpetual debt, unable to leave or save any money to uplift themselves. That's why they probably didn't have any bootstraps to pull themselves up by, because the sharecropper that they was leasing land from was stealing everything they had. Sad but true. That was considered to be economic slavery by another name. And we know slavery by another name came in all types, various forms, or what have you. So now we've had the antebellum period. That was just straight up slavery. Now then slavery is abolished. Then you move into sharecropping. That's another form of slavery. And now we're moving into Jim Crow. Jim Crow era, late 1800s to 1965, overlapped and followed sharecropping, as I just mentioned. System of legal segregation, schools, housing, transportation, and restrooms. In other words, for you Gen Z kids that don't know, black people, melanated people weren't allowed to ride in the front of the bus. We couldn't ride with them anyways. We couldn't go inside the front door of restaurants and get any food. We'd always have to go to the back. But most of the time, they didn't serve the N words. And what was I at again right there? Yeah, 1 second, y'all. Schools, we couldn't go to school with you guys. So by the 1960s or 50s, whatever, when Ruby Bridges was going to integrate into school, you had grown ass men and women out there calling the little girl names, all kinds of stuff. They had to bring in the National Guard to keep her safe. It's ridiculous. We can't forget about the I think Arkansas Nine, the 9 women trying to integrate into high school in Arkansas, where they had to do basically about the same thing. They had to have protection by way of the government. It's this is America. So restrooms, you had colored restrooms, white restrooms. You have to understand where the word white and black come from. The terms didn't exist until the 1600s, during which came about during before, during, and after Bacon's Rebellion, when the elite was keeping the so-called African Americans and the whites down in a perpetual state of poverty. They couldn't move up. Same thing they're doing now. And believe it or not, you have some of the same ignorant ass people to believe the 1% rather than to believe the people that they're down here with, because they feel like they're a part of it. We'll talk about that on another day. So as we continue forward, black codes. Later, Jim Crow laws criminalized black life. In other words, if you're black, melanated, you're a criminal, period. It's carrying on to date. So I know I'm talking fast. I'm trying to get through it. Just a little brief outline. But it is what it is. So if you're black and you live in America, hey, brother, hey, criminal. That's how they do. And I'll continue to push forward. Lynching, terror, and disenfranchisement kept black people politically powerless. If you don't know what lynching is, it's where they take a rope and tie it to something called a noose, throw one side over a big, thick, strong branch of a tree, put it over your head, pull it tight while your hands are tied behind your back, and they pull you up. A lot of times they tied your legs together so you wouldn't do all that kicking and possibly break the branch. Um, and they'd hang you up until you're dead. They did that to thousands of people that looked like me. They killed some white people too by way of lynching, who was friends with so-called blacks or who was trying to help them politically destroy Jim Crow, the Jim Crow era, the black codes, and what have you. And terrible period in American history, but it happened. Sharecropping and Jim Crow worked together economically, legally, and psychologically. So what I mean by economically, Jim Crow wouldn't allow people that look like myself to move up the food chain. Legally, if white man done something to myself, harmful, treated me like crap, and for whatever reason stole my property, and I wanted to take him to court, the court wasn't gonna side with me no matter what the evidence said. And psychological control. I'll lynch you, boy, next time you get out of line, boy, or gal. You're gonna be lynched. I'll lynch one of those little bastard children of yours next time you get out of line. So that's what it meant. That's what it means when it says economic, legal, and psychological control. That's what it's talking about. So then we've made it through the Jim Crow era. The new Jim Crow, mass incarceration, 1970s present. You hear that? Mass incarceration. I hope some of you guys have heard of the school to prison pipeline, where black kids, they say by the seventh grade, they know if those kids gonna be in prison or not. Excuse me one moment. So it's good to keep that in mind. But this is what's happening in the country. I don't know what we're gonna call this era. Probably Trumpism, because it's just as bad. But the new Jim Crow, mass incarceration from the 1970s to present. After civil rights gain, 1960, overt Jim Crow, that means openly, Jim Crow laws were struck down. When it says overt, that means openly. When it says covert, that means hidden, covered up. So, in case you guys didn't know, I just wanted to share that with you. Um, Anyways, 1960s, overt Jim Crow laws were struck down. So you can't go around. Um, so black people, melanated people, can now go into restaurants, same bathrooms, same schools, drink from the same water fountain, whatever. Go stay in any hotel of our choice. Even though, if you pay attention, if you watch any YouTube, you still see where hotel managers treat blacks like whatever, treat us melanated people like the 1950s, 60s Jim Crow, and so forth. So after civil rights gains, 1960s, overt Jim Crow laws were struck down, but the system evolved. It evolved into something else, process of evolution. Um, and that was the war on drugs in the 1980s, disproportionately targeted black communities. Cocaine's a hell of a drug and expensive. Rick James used to talk about it all the time. A couple other people. And I know some people growing up that used to be some cocaine cowboys. So in other words, what it's saying is now taking that cocaine and they've turned it into crack rock and they flooded the black community with it. And they wasn't doing anything until it started hitting the other communities. Is when they started to. Anyways, but mass incarceration, being that the prison system is privatized, they got to have bodies inside the prison. And so, what better way than to take something that's highly addictive and put it inside this community that we don't care about anyways? Sad, but true. Anyways, here we go. Um, War on drugs in the 1980s disproportionately targeted black communities, mandatory minimums, stop and frisk, and over police and criminalize black existence. Again, everything to keep us down. And again, to you people outside of the country, that's always got something to say about black people need to do better, black Americans need to do better. You have to understand that there are systems of control. It controls our movements. It controls our thoughts. We can't go anywhere without it being somebody that's part of these systems that just keep pulling us backwards. Look at what they're doing now with voter suppression because they know how powerful our votes are. But this is America. If you've been here for as long as I have, then you'll understand it. Okay. Um, let's talk about the scholar Michelle Alexander named it the New Jim Crow. So that's where the term New Jim Crow comes from. So you should get her book too. I got it up there. Um, Systemic racism today, 2000 to present. The system has become more subtle, but not less deadly. Redlining effects remain in segregated neighborhoods. Red lines means that there's a line on the map where you see that red line. Blacks can't move here. Blacks got to stay on that side. That's what redlining means. Um, Healthcare disparities, black maternal mortality, environmental racism, Flint Cancer Alley. So what they're talking about the black maternal mortality is black women die when they go to the hospital to give birth. We're talking about Flint Cancer Alley that is the water that the Flint system is facing right now when they haven't treated it. You know that water is extremely bad. Algor- um, Algorithmic bias in AI and facial recognition. In other words, they're telling AI to be ugly to black folks. Oh, we don't want. Boy, they will stoop to no lows and jump to any type of height in order to just, boy, the disparities and the ignorance and the stupidity of some people. As I mentioned a moment ago, school to prison pipeline. By the time your child hit the seventh grade, depends on how much trouble they've gotten into or the literacy of the child, they can make the determining factor if that child is going to end up in prison. And trust me, there is a system that follow these kids to make certain that that little son of a gun, male or female, find themselves in prison. It's a sad thing. And I've said this 1,000 times in this show. Sad, but very true. Christine, I love you, girl. You've done a great job in the creation of me. Anyways, underrepresentation in positions of power and wealth. In other words, they don't want us in the positions in power and wealth. So they'll kill the Malcolm X. They'll kill the Martin Luther Kings. They'll lock up the Angela Davis and run Asada Shakur completely out of the country. This is what happens if I come up politically and start making some traction and people and I gain a huge following. Then they're gonna go into my background and they're gonna tear me apart. It's an old game they've always played. They continue to play it, and we continue to fall for it. We got to do better with this thing called thought process. Think outside the box. Get away from closed-minded people. Critical thought is a mug. Remember, in the 1960s, 70s, Ronald Reagan said the worst thing this country needs is an educated proletariat. Why? Because a proletariat is someone from the bottom, opposite of the bourgeoisie. A proletariat is someone who goes to college like myself, comes back and try to share information wholeheartedly. But then you got those who will reject that information. They don't want to hear that shit, And then so we stay in this cycle. So then when you're not around, they talk about you like a dog, and that turns everybody else away from you. Which is why I have no friends except for the few friends I do have. We all like to read and debate one another, and that only feeds the food for that's only food for thoughts. That feeds the mind. That perpetuates growth. Um, but there you have it. But I would like to also share that, in the summary, in the closing, remember, we had slavery, sharecropping, Jim Crow, mass incarceration, and systemic technocratic racism, which is where we are today. That's your technocratic racism. That's the AI part I was talking about. Boy, boy, boy. But you know what, though? Despite all the ugliness, people that look, for the people that look like me, all the ugly we've had to face, it's a damn good thing to be black. Until next time. Oh, wait a minute. I want to share something with y'all before I go. Y'all don't mind, do you? I don't care if you do. I'm going to share it anyway. This is my damn show. Johnny Hanson was the first black man to become president under the Articles of Confederation. He was president for 8 years. Love you too, Barack. Until next time, I thank you for your frequency, vibration, and your rhythm. Sharif Prescott is out of here. Be easy.